With the official announcement of the Resident Evil 4 remake, many people are wondering what aspects of the original are Capcom going to keep with some minor changes or removing entirely. So I've decided that it would be a good idea to create my own list for what I think would be interesting to see in this remake. Resident Evil 4 is by far my favorite game of all time. I would even say that RE4 is in my top 5 video games of all time. I've had so many memories of just watching my brother playing this on the GameCube and being amazed, shocked, and being horrified at the same time. This was the game that got me hooked on the Resident Evil series as a whole. The gameplay is fun and energetic, the shooting is well executed and satisfying, the enemies are terrifying, the graphics surprisingly still kind of hold up to this day, but you don't need me to tell you that, right? Anyone who's ever played video games will tell you that this game is awesome, and the amount of times that this game has been ported on other consoles, it's easy to say that this game is worth of being called a legend. So when I heard that the RE4 remake was actually being made, it honestly caught me by surprise. I knew that leaks had said that this remake was coming out, but I didn't believe it because I thought that Capcom were still working on like other Resident Evil related stuff. But whatever, now that it's official, I can't wait to get my hands on this game and play it non-stop like I did in the original. So I'll just give my quick thoughts on the announcement itself, since everyone else has already analyzed the trailer, and in far greater detail than I ever could. Overall, I think this announcement was amazing. I like the aesthetically dark and sinister tone they're going for. The redesigns of the main characters look on point. I especially love how Ada is now in a red turtleneck sweater. That's pretty neat. And I was ecstatic to see the old enemies again, like the Ganados, the Zealots, the Big Cheese, and that one shot that hints that the Lago will also be in the game. It all looks very promising, and from what I've seen from previous remakes, I think this game will be amazing, and I'm especially hoping for them to improve upon the game's downsides and make sure to not cut out any content like how they did with the RE3 remake, which I don't think is particularly as bad of a game as people say, but it's understandable why people were upset. So with the RE4 remake being officially announced, it made me think, how fun would it be to brainstorm and come up with ideas and concepts that would be cool to see in this remake? And that's exactly what I did, and now I'm going to list them off and show it all to you. Before I continue, I want everybody to know that these are all just my own personal opinions, and I also don't want to seem entitled and expect all of these things to happen. I'm not trying to be like, I want to see this and I hope they show this, because I'm not. I'm just throwing out some ideas and concepts that I personally think would be cool, and I am also open to other people's opinions as well. So if you think you have any ideas that you think would be cool, please let me know. I am very curious to know what you guys think. Just don't be rude about it, you know. I'm still very new to this YouTube thing, and I want this to be like an open discussion. Basically, what I'm going to be doing here is analyzing parts or sections of the original game and seeing what Capcom would change or add to make it better. I will also be mentioning parts of the remake announcement when it's relevant. So without further ado, let's get started.
Resident Evil 4.
Oh, and I should also mention, there's spoilers. To start things off, I want to point out the introduction. From what we've seen in the announcement trailer, we see new shots of Leon with someone, probably the president, along with the remade shots of the original. This tells me that they are going to add a lot more to this introduction. So I'm hoping we'll get to see how Leon changed after Resident Evil 2 and explain what other things he's done to get to where he is. Or maybe we'll get to see something like how Ashley got kidnapped. Either one of those would be very interesting to see. For the village section, the main enemies that you'll be fighting are the Ganados, and I want to talk about their designs and AI real quick. For their designs, I'm already predicting that Capcom is already adding a lot more distinct designs to them and giving them different clothing, different facial features, or markings of any kind. I even made some concepts of my own of what they could probably look like. I believe they will do a great job with adding more designs and making them look different from each other. As for the enemy AI, I am hoping that this remake will make the enemies more threatening and smart. I would want them to move more radically and have it be like you're likely going to miss if you don't aim correctly. I would just like the danger to be the enemies themselves and not the overwhelming amount of enemies, you know? Next point I want to bring up is the dog you save in the beginning of the game. I would love to see Capcom do more with this dog, and I think they should give him a huge part in the village section of the game. Follow me on this, but if you choose to save him, you can have him fight with you in other parts of the village besides the El Gigante fight. Or maybe even have a super emotional scene with the dog where it looks like it's been infected and is going to die, and Leon has to put it down of its misery, like in I Am Legend. I would love to see Capcom try to do something like this, as it would give a lot of character to the dog and it would also be emotionally heartbreaking. Next up, this might be out of nowhere, but I would want to see them add blue herbs into this remake, just for no other reason than they had to add poison in as well. For example, when you get bit by a snake or get poisoned by any other enemies, and you have to find blue herbs to cure yourself, I would just think it would add an extra layer of difficulty to the game. Maybe it's a bad idea, I don't know. I thought it would be like a fun thing to add. Like, what would a blue, green, yellow, and red herb mix look like? I'll just get this one out of the way since I don't know where this would have fit, but I would really love to see this remake do more graphic death scenes. Another reason why I love Resident Evil 4 is the amount of ways you can die. I mean, for a remake of Resident Evil 4, I would just hope that Capcom would create more ways to die and make them just as graphic. For this point, I wanted to bring up the village attack. I don't have too much to say about this, it's already great as it is, but if there's one thing I would change about this, it would be the introduction of Dr. Salvador. For this, what if the house you're barricading yourself in turns out to be Dr. Salvador's house and he's inside with you? This I feel would be a much creepier introduction to the Chainsaw Man if he's just minding his own business and then he notices Leon barricading his door, so while Leon is distracted, he suits up and ready to attack him from behind. I think that would be so creepy. Now, for this part, I want to talk about the quick time events. If I had to pick my least favorite thing about RE4, it would have to be the QTEs. Not because they're hard or unfair, but because I feel that most of them are not needed. Aside from one exception, most of the QTEs feel like they were placed in to keep the players on their toes and focused. I would just hope that Capcom will just dumb down on the QTEs a little bit, or have them be more immersive with the gameplay itself. This next section, I want to talk about Luis Serra. For this one, it's just plain and simple. I want to see him more in the game other than in cutscenes and in the house defense. I would love to learn more about Luis so we can get more connected with him before his unfortunate end. I would also like to be able to play as him in either the main game or even in a side mode. And maybe Capcom might do something like that, but I'll talk about that later on. Just keep that in mind. Next up, we have the Merchant, otherwise known as the best character in the entire game.
Got something that might interest you.
For me, the Merchant is already perfect as is, but if there's one thing I would like to see added to him, it would be the special rewards that he would give you from shooting blue medallions. What I mean by this is, you know the blue medallions you see throughout the village portion of the game? Have those blue medallions be the hidden collectible and scatter them throughout the whole game, and the merchant would give you special rewards for shooting a number of those medallions. Like, these rewards can be like a special gun attachment like in RE2 and 3, or a permanent upgrade like steroids or stabilizers like in RE7. I think this is a cool idea that I could see Capcom doing something like this. Don't quote me on that though. Another thing about the merchant is the shooting range and bottle caps. For this one, I'm not sure if Capcom will keep or remove the shooting range, but if they do keep it, I would like to see them add more bottle caps. I know that they already have unlockable 3D models in previous Resident Evils, but I would like to have the shooting range be how you would unlock these 3D models. I don't know, I just really like these bottle caps, and it would be awesome to see Capcom bring them back. For this part, we're going to talk about the big cheese of this whole village, the badass himself, Chief Mendez. For this guy, I would want him to play a huge part of the whole village section of the game. And for anyone who's played the recent RE games, you already know where I'm going with this. I mean, you have Mr. X, Nemesis, Jack Baker, Lady Dimitrescu, so why not have the big cheese be the main antagonist that stalks you throughout the whole section of the game? I could even imagine it right now, having to be in the middle of a fight when suddenly the chief just comes out from behind and destroys you. I would love to see the chief be in more of the village portions before his boss fight. And I do believe Capcom is planning on doing that. Speaking of boss fights, this brings us to the Del Lago. With this clip from the remake announcement sort of confirming that the Del Lago will be in this game, it will be interesting to theorize how Capcom will revamp this boss. I personally think it would be unique if they made the Del Lago fight be optional, and here is how I think they could do that. You would have to make the lake longer and a bit more narrow, so when you don't choose to fight it, you still have to go from point A to point B whilst this monster is still on your tail and always on the attack. Another reason why I think this could work is to have the lake be the only route back to the village, making you have to deal with a Del Lago again if you didn't fight it the first time. I think this would be really cool to add because if you do choose to fight it, you don't have to deal with it anymore. But if you don't, be prepared to go another round with the Del Lago. Now we move on to the El Gigante. And it won't be for the fight itself, or even the design of this beast, because I don't think those things need to be touched. For this point, I thought it would be more interesting to have lead up to the El Gigante fight. For example, like while you're walking around in the forest at nighttime, you can barely see anything. You hear giant footsteps accompanied by some scenery trees tumbling down as you see this giant shadowy figure walking by in the distance. I think that would be truly scary to see in the game, as it would give a good sign of bad things to come. Next up, I want to talk about the section where you have two routes. If Capcom does plan on including this in the game, I think it would be better to have the best parts of both routes and merge them together. So you would have to go through the horde of Ganados in the beginning, then have to deal with the Chainsaw Girls in the middle, and then you have to fight the El Gigante at the very end. I think it would work very well. Lastly, for the village section, we have the Big Cheese boss fight. For this part, I would love to see them give this boss fight an additional phase before his transformation. Like the first phase, it would be his normal form, where you mainly have to dodge, and the only way you can hurt him is to burn him with either flame canisters or incendiary grenades. Then it leads up to his second phase with his transformed form, and then his third phase with his half-body form. It would just be such a cool idea to fight him in his normal form and then gradually have him transform in the middle of the fight. I think that would be very cool. Now we are at one of my personal favorite sections of the whole game. The castle is aesthetically amazing with its gothic design and the many creepy enemies you'll see throughout it. It makes this section the most memorable part of the game for me. But now let's get over some parts of the castle and see what Capcom could change or add to them. The Zealots, or cultists as many people call them, are one of the main reasons why the castle is by far my favorite part of the game. I just love the design of these guys along with their variety of cultist outfits. I especially love their creepy chant. It's legitimately creepy and I like that. I think Capcom is going to put a lot of effort into making these guys aesthetically more creepy and threatening. Here's what I think they might do. They'll either have to change their clothing to be more ornate with extra detail, or have the outfits be more torn or covered with blood. In either case, I would not complain. But if there's one thing I would like to change about the Zealots, it would be their weaponry. Listen, I have no problems with the maces, scythes, and crossbows, but the huge spiked shields, to me, have always been over the top. Like, I would have preferred if they just had normal sized shields. But the shields don't really bother me as much as the next ones that we'll be talking about, which are the Gatling gun and rocket launcher Zealots. I don't know about you guys, but I think I would prefer leaving the rocket launcher and Gatling gun enemies out of this remake. These enemies kind of break the survival horror experience for me and make it feel more of an action game. It just feels way over the top and unnecessary. And yes, we will get to that later, but not now. But the point is, I would have no problem with Capcom leaving out these specific enemies. Now we get to the main antagonist of the castle section, Ramon Salazar. For this one, I hope they would give Salazar a bigger role in the game, and most importantly, have him look and sound more menacing. I really like Salazar, but one of my pet peeves with him is that at some point he becomes jokingly childish.
How dare you! No more games! Kill him!
If this remake wants to take things more seriously, they would have to change up parts of his personality and make him more sinister, I feel like. For this next part, I would like to talk about the castle maze, because I think it's a very good area and it could be even better and creepier with upgrades and visual improvements. I just hope that this remake does not remove this part of the game. I hope they can expand upon this maze idea and add new enemies to make it even scarier. So at this point, I should probably talk about Ada, I guess. The thing is that what I'm gonna say applies to the rest of the main characters in this game. I want to see Ada in more of the game, like in cutscenes and stuff, and to see how she also changed after the events of Resident Evil 2, like how she was hired by Albert Wesker. But I feel all of this would be better fitting for her own separate campaign, and you know what that one is. Again, I'll talk about it later on. But anyway, my point is that I would like to see her in more of the story and what she does in the background of the main story. The next section of the castle that I wanted to point out is the lava room. Now, personally, I think Capcom can do without the lava room. I would prefer if they created an entirely different room to replace that room in order to maintain the scary vibe of the game. Like, for example, they could make it like a huge dungeon prison and fill it with like Gyarados or giant bugs. I feel like something like that would be more scary than the room full of lava. And let's be clear, I don't hate this area, but I feel like it's not as scary as they hoped it would be, and I feel like they could do a lot better now if they do something different. Next up, I want to talk about the suits of armor. For these guys, I would like to see a drastic change in their design and how they act. For example, I would make the suits of armor be filled with parasites, and the more you shoot them, the more parasites get exposed. This could work into the gameplay if they started out slow, and the more you shoot them and the more that they're exposed, they become faster and deadlier, but easier to kill. I feel like that would make them a lot more interesting and very threatening. The mine section is when I feel the game is getting a little bit repetitive. I would be fine if they made a few cuts to this section alone, and for me it would be the huge bug cave along with the instant death boulders. Those would be my least favorite parts of the castle section. Another section I would like to see changed is the minecart ride. I feel like the minecart part would be better if it was mixed with the previous part before it. Like, let me explain. Say you're fighting through the underground ruins and you find a key item, and then all of a sudden the cave starts collapsing and you have to escape via the minecart. I feel like that would be a lot better. Next, I need to bring up the Salazar statue part, because this one I really don't know whether to keep or not. I really like the theme of this area, and the chase at the end is incredibly blood pumping, but I don't know if it meshes with the theme that this remake is probably going for. Like, I would love to see them bring this back, but again, this one is really up in the air for me. Let me know if you think they should bring this back or not. And lastly, for this whole castle section, is the final boss fight with Salazar. This fight is absolutely fantastic, and I hope that this remake will do more with this fight. Like, for my idea, I would like to see the area before the boss fight be part of the boss fight. Like, when you reach there, he transforms and his weak spot is all the way at the top, and you have to run all the way up there while Salazar is attacking you the whole time. While again, I don't believe that this remake will do exactly that, I would love to see how they will handle this boss fight. Now we have finally arrived at the most divisive section of the whole game. The island section is what most people, including myself, expect to see getting a major change done to it. This is mostly because the island is when the game becomes more focused on the action instead of the horror, aside from a few exceptions, and I hope that this remake will greatly improve this section of the game. One adjustment that I would suggest is to change the entire theme of the island and make it feel more horror-like. If there's one thing on this list that I do hope that they'll change, it would be this. I think instead of the military factory theme that it currently has, imagine if it had more of an ancient ruin architecture theme or a classic Resident Evil laboratory theme. But for me, I would love for them to go with an abandoned maximum security prison theme, Alcatraz style. I would love to see them do something like this, and it would give the island more of a creepy factor to it. Whatever they decide to do with the island, changing the theme of it is all I really hope for. Next up, we have the soldier enemies. Now for these guys, they would need a dramatic change in their design if they do decide to go with a different theme. So for example, if they do decide on a prison theme, these would be how I think they would look. Have them be in either a guard or prisoner clothing, and as an optional choice, have them with messed up facial features and scars to give them a unique look. These new designs are especially necessary for one particular soldier enemy, which is the hammer soldier. For this guy, I was not a huge fan of his honestly stupid design, so I would like him to be redesigned more than anything else. For example, I would like for him to look like an escaped death row inmate with stolen body armor. Just make him look more threatening and not as stupid looking. Now we get on to the Gatling gun guys. I'm pretty sure we all know it's probably for the best if these enemies stay out of the remake. Like, I don't think there's any doubts about that. Main reason is because the concept itself is pretty over the top and how it really breaks away from the horror experience. So I do hope that Capcom thinks similarly, that the Gatling gun dudes won't be necessary to include in this remake. Alright, here we are folks. Probably one of the most famous, creepiest enemies in the whole game. The Regenerators are a fan favorite, and for good reason, because of their creepy music that plays in the background, how it slowly walks towards you, and how you can't easily kill it. For these guys, I would want them to be more menacing and scary when you first interact with them. For this reason to make sense, I would like Capcom to make a section where you are stuck in a huge room filled with the Regenerators, and instead of getting the thermal scope right away, you have to do some complex puzzles in order to obtain the scope. I feel like this could be an amazing adrenaline pumping idea that I could see them do for this remake. These next sections I'm going to be talking about are my least favorite parts of the whole island section, and those are the Wrecking Ballroom and the cargo truck. The Wrecking Ballroom to me feels like another repetitive area where you wait and fight enemies until you're allowed to leave. And the cargo truck, there's something about this section that really makes me not like it. Maybe because of how it just slows things down and it's not that exciting to do. I would be okay with this remake leaving these sections out and replacing it with something better. I don't have any ideas off the top of my head right now, but I do think they could do something better. Next up, we have Jack Krauser. This is kind of something I'm stuck on as well, because I like Krauser, but I don't know how they're gonna add him without any backstory or reason why Leon knows him. Okay, I know that Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles gave us the backstory of how they used to be partners, but I feel like it might be a bit confusing for new Resident Evil fans to not include some kind of context for this remake. I would hope they do include Jack Krauser's backstory in some form of DLC or as a bonus mode after beating the game. I think that would be pretty cool. And speaking of Krauser, one thing that I would like to see done in this remake is to have a full playable knife fight, not just a series of quick time events. For this idea, I would make it to where you have full on movement and quick time events only happen in between parts of the fight. I would love to be able to play this full-on knife brawl, and I would like to see this remake do something similar like that. But again, I'm not predicting this to be true. Oh, and also as a bonus, they should give you an option to pull out your guns. But when you do, Krauser would run up to you and punch the guns away from you. Or he would straight up instant kill you. And the only reason I included that last part was because I thought it was kind of fitting. It is Resident Evil 4 after all. Now we have gotten to it, or just the U3. For this boss, I could definitely see Capcom keeping him for this remake, but with a massive redesign. I could totally see them going for a different U3 design with similar features but switched around for a more unique look. With that in mind, I kind of made my own concept of what the redesigned U3 could look like, but whatever the case, I think Capcom will really do a good job with this monstrosity, and I can't wait to see what they'll do with it. We took a slight detour, so we'll just get back on track talking about Krauser with his boss fight. The only thing that kind of bugs me about Krauser's boss fight is when he transforms, his arm is the only thing that gets mutated and his transformation just kind of ends there. So I thought, what if throughout the boss fight he keeps mutating even more? Follow me on this. So basically when the battle begins, he'll just start off with just his arm, that's fine. But as the fight progresses and the more you damage him, he'll keep on mutating, so at the end he just becomes this monster that doesn't even resemble Krauser anymore. I feel like that would add a layer of epicness to this boss fight, and it could also be a bit sad for Leon, thinking back to how he used to be a good guy. For this next one, I want to talk about the helicopter. This part is where the game relies mostly on action, and if this remake wants to be more reliant on the horror, they might have to take this part out of the game. Personally, I think it would be better if the helicopter was just in cutscenes and they would explain how he couldn't help you because they would shoot him down right away, and your job is to stealthily take down each gun dude and disable the alarms so you and Mike could take them all out with ease. I feel like something like that would be a lot better and fitting for this remake. Now we get on to the main villain of the whole game. Osmond Saddler as a character is really cool, and I like his design a lot as a creepy, menacing cult leader. But in the game's story, he just wasn't a very interesting villain in my opinion. I even think that Salazar was a better villain than him. Although from what we've seen in the trailers, it feels like this remake is gonna make Saddler more of a menacing villain. And I hope they do a lot more with him because I do like Saddler. I just want to see more of him. This is also a nice lead up to the final boss fight with Saddler. I do think this boss fight is great, but there are a couple of things that I would like to see them add to this boss. I would like for them to make this final boss feel more grand and exciting by making his transformation more huge and more threatening, because while I like his original transformation, I was a little bit disappointed that they didn't go further beyond with his monster design. And that's all I'm really hoping for with this final boss. I would just want them to make him look more monstrous and feel like a final boss. And now we are at the last part of the game, the jet ski escape. Now I believe that Capcom might keep this in the game, but with a few differences. For me though, I would want the final escape changed to where you have to reach the jet ski before the island explodes, and there are enemies along the way that you have to defeat. And when you finally get to the jet ski, the game ends. I feel like that would be a more climactic and exciting ending to the game. And that is everything that I wanted to talk about in the main game. All except for one last thing. And I kept this for last on purpose because this part is extremely important to the whole game, and there is so much that I want to talk about. And you guys probably know where I'm going with this. If I were to be completely honest, Ashley isn't really that big of an annoyance to me as other people think she is. Yeah, she is a bit of a hassle, but I think that was kind of the point. But I am expecting to see them improve Ashley's AI and making her more responsive. And how I think they could do that is by making her run or back away when enemies come close, or even have Ashley warn Leon when enemies are coming from behind. Alongside the basic improvements, what I think they should do for this remake is to add something more unique to Ashley. And what I mean by that is by giving Ashley an important role. You can have Ashley be either 1, a healer, or 2, a fighter. Having her be a healer simply means she can also carry healing items, so when Leon is hurt, she can heal him right away. And not only that, have her healing items give a bit more health or even slight stat boosts, just to make her seem a little bit more special. And having her be a fighter would mean she could fight back against the enemies only if she has a weapon. In order for her to gain a weapon, you would have to kill a Ganado so it drops its weapon. Then you could tell Ashley to pick it up so she could defend herself whenever she's grabbed or cornered, so you don't have to worry about her as much. And they could also have weapon durabilities, from weak weapons like a wooden stick to longer lasting weapons like a medieval sword. Either one of these roles would be awesome to see in this game, and it would give the remake a refreshing take on it as well. And I do phrase the word either here because I don't want Ashley to be too overpowered, because it would remove any form of stress and tension from the actual gameplay. So either one I would be fine with. Again, these were just some ideas that I think would be cool. Oh, and we're not done yet. Another thing I would like to see change with Ashley is her character in cutscenes. Again, this is to be expected, but I want to see more character development, especially done with her. To be more specific, I'm talking about times when Ashley was done poorly, like when you first get separated from her in the castle. And this part really gets under my skin because I know they wanted you to take a break from taking care of Ashley, but the way they do it, it just makes her look like a bratty little kid.
You alright?
I'm fine! Leave me alone!
Ashley, wait! Ashley!
What's going on?
Here is how I would better recreate this scene. What I think a better way of doing it would be if they got ambushed by cultists from behind, and while Leon is fighting them back, Ashley looks up and sees a spiked gate that's about to close down on Leon. So right before the gate falls down on him, Ashley pushes him out of the way, saving his life, but now they're on different sides of the gate, and then she gets kidnapped. That would be a more believable scene. So basically, I'm just hoping that they iron out some of the flaws and make the character choices and reasonings feel more believable. You know what, while we're still on the topic of Ashley, I would also like to see them make more sections where you play as Ashley because that is probably the best part of the original game. I just like it because of how defenseless you are, and it would be so much more scary if they added more gameplay sections like that. Hell, maybe even throw a mini boss into the mix as well. There's so much you can do with Ashley's gameplay sections. Alright, now that's everything that I wanted to talk about in the main game. And this is where I could end the whole wish list, but it just wouldn't feel right to me if I didn't mention Resident Evil 4's unused and side content. So we'll just quickly go through these, have my thoughts on whether they should keep them or remove them, and then it's video over, alright? So let's talk about Separate Ways and Assignment Ada, because I have some mixed thoughts about them. Separate Ways is a nice side story mode that follows Ada's perspective throughout the main game, and Assignment Ada is a non-canon mode where you have to collect samples. I like these two modes, but if I had to choose one to be brought back for the remake, I would choose Separate Ways over Assignment Ada for multiple reasons. One, Separate Ways is a much longer mode and has more replayability. Two, Assignment Ada is just a retread of the first part of the island, which I know is the point, but you know what I mean too. 3. I feel like Assignment Ada feels more at home in the original RE4. And 4. I would be more interested to see what new things they could add to Separate Ways in this remake. Maybe they'll add new stages, maybe they'll add new enemies. I don't know, but it would be cool to think about what they could add with Ada's perspective. Now, we have come to the best side mode that Resident Evil has ever done. The Mercenaries is awesome, and another thing that would be so criminal not to include in this remake. If there was anything I would care about being changed in Mercenaries, it would be the addition of new characters and maps. If I had to add any new characters to Mercenaries to go along with the original 5, my top 5 would be Louis Serra, Jill Valentine, Claire Redfield, Barry Burton, and Rebecca Chambers. I feel like I don't really need to explain myself on why I chose Louis, but the other 4, I want to see them included because I think they would be cool to see, and also because I think some of them are just very underrated characters who haven't been brought into the spotlight enough, which is also why I didn't include Chris. I just felt it was time to give the other guys some love, you know? As for extra maps, how cool would it be to see maps like the village church, the castle water room, the maze, or even the island ruins? Hell, why not include maps from previous Resident Evil games? Like what if they put the RPD from RE2, or even downtown Raccoon City from RE3? I would be totally satisfied with any one of these maps making it to Mercenaries. Again, this is all just personal opinion, brainstorming concepts. I don't expect to see any of this in the remake. This is just all for fun. As you guys can tell, I am very excited to see what Capcom is going to do with the RE4 remake. Especially because this is a perfect opportunity for them to bring back content that never was used in the original. Like, I can only imagine what kind of cut enemies would be brought back, like the Arcanist, the Parasite Woman, or even the infamous Hookman. I would like to see that dude come back. I could even see Capcom bringing back the Black Fog concept, which can make for some genuinely creepy moments with hallucinations and creepy dolls attacking you. Whatever they decide to do, I hope they can bring back these cut ideas and give them new life in this remake. Finally, we get to talk about some extra modes that I feel they could add in this remake. I was really brainstorming and I thought to myself, what if they brought a new version of Ghost Survivors? Like short stories where you could play as minor characters. I even thought of some ideas and what they could do. Such as one where you get to play as Lewis and you have to obtain a Plaga sample and fight your way back to Leon. Another one would be is where you get to play as one of the drivers who manages to survive the car crash and tries to hide from the Ganados and find shelter, which happens to be the one near the lake. And finally, how about one where you get to play as Dr. Salvador right when the plagas has started infecting the villagers? I would like to see the remake try something like this and create something similar to RE2's Ghost Survivors. I think that would be pretty neat. And that is the end of the wish list for the RE4 remake. Holy crap. This took way too long. But I'm also very proud that I did it because, as I said from the beginning, I love this game and I really hope that this remake does it justice and improve upon its perfection. At the same time though, I really hope they take their time with getting this game right and not rush it. This is something I feel like a lot of people don't know, but they really should. But remaking a game is hard, and one single change can make a huge difference for better or for worse. Especially with a game like this that many people cherish and say that it's one of their favorite games of all time. God bless anyone who's working on this remake. This must not be like an easy thing for you guys to do. Anyway, if you like this video, please give a huge thumbs up. If you agree or disagree on anything I've said throughout this video, or if you think you have an idea that you'd like to see in this remake, please let me know in the comments. I'm very interested to see what you guys think. And if you want, why not subscribe as well? I would really appreciate it. I might not do these overly long scripted videos all the time because they take way too long to make, but this was really fun to make. Alright, that's gonna be enough from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Peace out.